Have you ever walked into a room and felt like no one even noticed you? Or maybe something more confusing. Have you ever caught a woman looking at you, just for a second, then she looked away, and you told yourself it probably meant nothing? Why does that moment stay in your mind longer than it should? And what does it really mean when you can't tell if you're being seen or completely overlooked? Most men live in that quiet uncertainty, not because they lack value, but because they've been taught to look for the wrong signals. They've been conditioned to believe that attraction must be obvious, loud, direct, unmistakable. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the more subtle it is, the more real it actually becomes? Let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you questioned your own attractiveness, not because of rejection, but because of silence? Because no one said anything? Because no one made it clear? Because no woman walked up to you and said, "I like you." So you assumed, "I must not be that guy." But here's something most men never realize. The men who doubt themselves the most are often the men women notice the most. And that sounds strange, doesn't it? Because you've probably been told that confidence is loud, that attractive men are obvious, that if women are interested, you would know. But real attraction doesn't work like that. Not for women. A man feels attraction like a spark, immediate, forward. He sees someone and he wants to act. There's clarity in it, direction, movement. But a woman, she feels attraction differently. Slower, quieter, more aware than reactive. She doesn't rush toward you, she becomes aware of you. She observes, she senses, she waits. And most importantly, she signals, not with words, but with presence, with energy, with moments that are so small you've been trained to ignore them. That's where most men lose, not because they aren't attractive, but because they don't recognize when they are. Let's go deeper. Have you ever made eye contact with a woman and it lasted just a little longer than normal? Not long enough to feel obvious, but long enough to feel different. There was a pause, a hesitation, almost like something unspoken passed between you, and then she looked away. And what did you do? You probably dismissed it. You told yourself it meant nothing. But here's what most men never understand. That extra second is not random. It's not neutral. It's investment. Because people don't hold eye contact unless something inside them is engaged. The human nervous system doesn't linger without reason. And here's where it becomes even more interesting. Have you ever noticed that she looks again? Just briefly. Almost like she's checking something. And again, you ignore it. But think about your own behavior for a moment. When something doesn't interest you, you don't look twice. You move on instantly. But when something catches your attention, you verify it. You go back. That second look is not curiosity anymore. It's confirmation. She's not just seeing you, she's becoming aware of you. And more importantly, she's wondering if you noticed her noticing you. That's the moment most men fail. Not because they do something wrong, but because they do nothing at all. They break eye contact too quickly. They look down. They retreat into their thoughts because doubt steps in. Was that real? Am I imagining it? And just like that, the moment disappears. But a grounded man doesn't chase that moment. He doesn't react to it. He simply stays present. He holds eye contact just long enough, with calmness, not intensity, not pressure, just awareness, and maybe a slight smile. That's it. Nothing forced, nothing exaggerated, because attraction doesn't need effort. It needs recognition. Now let's move into something even more subtle, something that happens around you without you realizing it. Have you ever noticed women positioning themselves near you? Not directly approaching, not making it obvious, but somehow they end up in your space, the same area, the same circle, the same environment, again and again. And you tell yourself, it's probably a coincidence.
But is it? Or is it something else? Because women rarely chase directly, but they create opportunities. They don't move toward you in a straight line, they move around you. They place themselves where interaction can happen without risking rejection. It's quiet, strategic, almost invisible unless you know what you're looking for. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been somewhere, a cafe, a gathering, even a simple waiting area, and noticed the same woman near you more than once? Not in an obvious way, but enough to feel repeated, and you ignored it because it wasn't clear, because it wasn't direct. But here's the truth. Proximity is never accidental when it repeats. It's positioning. It's her way of saying, "I'm here," without actually saying anything. And this is where attraction becomes misunderstood, because you've been taught to look for bold moves. But women don't lead with boldness. They lead with awareness. They give you space to step in, not because they lack confidence, but because they're observing yours. And here's something deeper most men miss. When a woman places herself near you, she's not just hoping you talk to her. She's studying you, your energy, your presence, your reactions, your calmness, or your nervousness. Because before she chooses to open up, she wants to feel something first, and that something is safety. Not safety in a physical sense, but emotional, energetic. Does your presence feel stable, or does it feel uncertain? Do you seem grounded, or are you seeking validation? These questions are answered before a single word is spoken. That's why many men lose opportunities without ever realizing they had them, because they were waiting for clarity while she was offering subtlety. Now think about this honestly. How many moments like this have you dismissed? How many times did you assume there's nothing there, when in reality, there was something beginning? This is not about overthinking. This is about awareness. Because once you start seeing these patterns, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing obvious signals and you start recognizing real ones. And that changes everything. Not your behavior at first, but your perception. And perception is where confidence is born. Not from forcing yourself to believe something, but from finally seeing what was always there.
Now, let me ask you something even deeper. Have you ever been in a conversation where you didn't try to impress anyone, and yet somehow people leaned in? Where you spoke normally, but the noise around you seemed to quiet down? What does it really mean when attention comes to you without you chasing it? Most men overlook this completely because they've been taught that attraction is about doing more, talking more, showing more, proving more. But real presence doesn't come from effort. It comes from stillness. There's a certain kind of man who doesn't need to dominate a room, but the room still feels him. Not because he's loud, but because he's grounded. Have you ever noticed how some men speak and people naturally listen? Not out of obligation, but out of interest. Not because he demands attention, but because his presence holds it. This is something psychology calls the halo effect, but not in the way you think. It's not just about looks, it's about perception. When someone appears calm, composed, centered, people begin to assume deeper qualities about him. Strength, confidence, clarity, even if he never says a word about it. And women feel this faster than men do, because they're not just listening to what you say, they're reading how you exist, your tone, your pace, your pauses. Have you ever rushed your words just to avoid silence? Have you ever felt the need to fill every gap so things don't feel awkward? That habit alone destroys more attraction than rejection ever could, because silence is not your enemy. Silence is tension, and tension is where attraction lives. A grounded man isn't afraid of silence. He uses it. He allows a moment to breathe. He answers slowly, not because he's unsure, but because he's in control. And something subtle happens when you do this. People begin to adjust to your rhythm, not the other way around. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Have you ever noticed someone copying your movements without realizing it? You lean back, they lean back. You slow down your speech, they begin to match your pace. You touch your face, moments later, they do the same. At first glance, it seems meaningless, but it's not. It's one of the strongest subconscious signals of connection. This is called mirroring, and it happens when someone feels comfortable and emotionally aligned with you. Not logically, not consciously, but instinctively. Because the human brain is wired to sync with what feels safe. And here's something most men don't realize. Women don't mirror men they feel nothing for. They don't align with energy that feels off. Their body simply doesn't allow it. So when it happens, it's not politeness, it's connection. Let me ask you this. Have you ever walked away from an interaction and later realized she was matching your energy the entire time? Your posture, your tone, your rhythm, and you missed it? Because again, you were waiting for something obvious, something clear, something verbal. But attraction rarely speaks first. It reveals itself quietly, through behavior, through alignment, through small moments that only make sense when you're aware enough to see them. Now, think about this. Why would someone subconsciously match you if they weren't drawn to you in some way? Why would their body relax around you if they didn't feel something? The answer is simple. They wouldn't. And yet, most men ignore this completely because they're too focused on what they don't see instead of what's already happening. Now, let's go even deeper, because there's a shift that happens at this point. A shift from external signals to internal impact. Have you ever received a compliment that didn't focus on your appearance? Not "you look good," but something different. Something like, "I like your energy. I feel comfortable around you. You're easy to talk to." And maybe you dismissed it. Maybe you thought, "She's just being nice." But what if that's not what it means? What if that's actually a stronger signal than anything physical? Because physical attraction is immediate, surface level, but emotional comfort takes time, awareness, experience. When a woman tells you she feels comfortable around you, she's not commenting on how you look, she's describing how you make her feel. And that is where real attraction begins. Because before desire, there is safety. Before closeness, there is trust. And most men try to skip that part. They focus on impressing instead of grounding. They try to stand out instead of being present. But presence is what creates emotional impact. And emotional impact is what she remembers. Not what you said, not what you did, but how she felt around you. Let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you ignored compliments like this because they didn't sound like attraction? Because they weren't direct enough? But here's the truth. Women rarely express attraction in ways men expect. They express it in ways they feel safe expressing it. Subtle, layered, indirect. And if you don't understand that, you'll keep missing it. Now, think about this carefully. Would a woman go out of her way to tell you she feels comfortable around you if she felt nothing? Would she open that emotional door without a reason? Of course not. That comfort is not neutral. It's the beginning of something deeper. But only if you recognize it. Only if you don't brush it off. Only if you allow it to mean something. And this is where most men sabotage themselves. They reject positive signals because they don't trust them. They question them. They minimize them. Because deep down, they don't see themselves as attractive. So even when reality shows them otherwise, they filter it out. And that's where the real problem begins. Not in how women see you, but in how you see yourself. Because perception shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. If you believe you're not attractive, you will hesitate, you will doubt, you will hold back. And in doing so, you break the very connection that was forming. But when you start recognizing these patterns, something changes. You stop second-guessing, you stop dismissing, you start observing. And that observation becomes quiet confidence. Not arrogance, not ego, just awareness. And awareness is where everything begins to shift. Now let me ask you something that most men avoid asking themselves. What if the problem was never your attractiveness, but your awareness of it? What if you've been standing in rooms, walking past opportunities, living through moments where interest was already there, but you simply didn't recognize it? And what does that do to a man over time when he keeps missing signals that were meant for him? He starts to doubt himself, not because he lacks value, but because he lacks confirmation. And that's where everything quietly starts to break, because a man who doubts his value begins to behave differently. More cautious, more hesitant, more reactive. He starts seeking reassurance in subtle ways, overanalyzing conversations, replaying moments in his mind, asking himself questions like, did she mean something by that? Was that interest or just politeness? And the more he questions, the less present he becomes. And here's the irony. The moment you start seeking confirmation is the moment your natural presence disappears. Because instead of experiencing the moment, you're evaluating it. Instead of feeling, you're thinking. And women feel that instantly, not consciously, but energetically. Because attraction isn't built through analysis, it's built through presence. Now here's where everything shifts, and this is the part most men never fully understand. Attraction doesn't grow when you chase clarity. It grows when you become comfortable with uncertainty. Because uncertainty creates tension, and tension is what pulls people in. Think about it. If everything is obvious, if everything is explained, if every moment is defined immediately, there's no space for curiosity, no room for emotion to build, no reason for her to wonder about you. But when you allow moments to breathe, when you don't rush to label everything, something deeper starts to happen. She begins to think about you. Not because you forced it, but because you left space for it. Now let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever felt like you needed to do more to keep someone interested? To text more, to talk more, to prove more, to show more? Where did that belief come from? Because the truth is, the more you try to prove your value, the more you unconsciously communicate that you don't believe in it. And that energy pushes attraction away. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're trying too hard. Now compare that to a man who simply knows. He doesn't rush. He doesn't chase reactions. He doesn't panic in silence. He observes. He responds. He chooses. And there's something about that energy that feels different, stable, grounded, certain. And women don't just notice that, they feel it. Because emotional stability is rare, and rarity is attractive. Now here's something even deeper. Have you ever noticed how some men don't seem to try at all, yet they draw attention naturally? It's not luck, it's not magic, it's alignment. They are not trying to become attractive, they are not questioning every interaction, they are not seeking validation in every moment. They are simply present. And presence is what most men lose the moment they start doubting themselves. So the real question becomes, how do you return to that? How do you stop overthinking and start experiencing? It begins with one simple shift. You stop asking, does she like me? And you start asking, do I even like this energy? That one question changes everything. Because now you're not chasing approval, you're evaluating connection. You're no longer placing her above you, you're meeting her at eye level. And that creates balance. Because attraction is not about one person trying to win the other. It's about mutual curiosity, mutual energy, mutual presence. Now think about this carefully. When you walk into a room, do you look for who notices you, or do you become aware of what you feel? Do you shrink into your thoughts, or expand into the moment? Do you wait to be chosen, or do you quietly choose where your attention goes? Because that shift is the difference between a man who hopes and a man who knows. Now here's the final truth, and it's something you won't hear often. You don't become more attractive by adding something new. You become more attractive by removing what's false. The doubt, the hesitation, the need for validation, the habit of dismissing positive signals. All of that is noise. And when that noise fades, what's left is clarity, calm, presence.
And that presence is what women respond to. Not your words, not your effort, not your performance, but your state. So the next time you catch a glance, don't dismiss it. The next time someone positions themselves near you, don't ignore it. The next time you feel a moment of connection, don't overanalyze it. Just be there, fully, calmly, without needing anything from it. Because that's where attraction lives. Not in chasing, not in proving, but in being. And once you truly understand that, you stop wondering where you stand. Because you're no longer waiting to be seen. You already see yourself. And that changes everything.